You are in charge of making your own life happen. You can either make it or break it. You are building well with the power of your thoughts. Emerson says that the power of thought is spiritual and that it is the most powerful thing that people have. The way the world is now is only possible because of what people have thought together. Each country is either at peace and wealth or in poverty, murder and chaos right now because of how its people think as a country. And every person is what they are, their life is what it is, and their situations are what they are because of their thoughts. A person turns into what he thinks about. What a person thinks drives everything he does. What a man thinks brings his situations and surroundings to him. Who a man thinks about affects the kinds of people who will hang out with him. If a man thinks certain things, he will either be happy or sad, successful or failed, healthy or sick, rich or poor, hated or loved. When a man thinks, it either makes him better or worse. What a person thinks can either beat fate or make it stronger. It can either connect him with his great destiny or make him an outcast who wanders around empty places. Indeed, the power of thought is unlimited because it is a mental power with great strength. This power is what sets man apart from animals. With this power, he can reach God, make someone who has failed in life a winner, make the greatest accomplishment possible, get through hard times, get past the bad things that come with being born and belonging, and make life more beautiful, inspiring, and full of energy with the powers that God has given him. People bless or curse themselves with their thoughts. It determines whether he will succeed or fail, be healthy or sick, be happy or unhappy, and be poor or wealthy. The nature of his thought and his mind are the only factors. Everything that isn't working well in our lives, discord, lack, illness, or sadness, is because of the way we think. The world is well organized, but people don't behave in a way that is in harmony with it. We don't agree with the law and order that is hidden all around us. The universe doesn't need to change. We do. We each live in a small world that we made ourselves, so the chaos in our own world comes from within. So, unless we change our mind, habit, thought, and mental attitude, we will never be able to escape the disorder and problems that plague us, or the lack that limits our lives. In the pages that follow, I'll try to show you how to change your thinking and mental state to move the lever backwards and align yourself with the divine idea. He will be led in peace. His life will bloom like a rose. The mountains and hills will be happy when he dies, and all the trees in the field will clap their hands. Chapter 1. Thoughts lead to actions. The aware mind and the inner mind are different. The senses are how the aware mind learns and gains memories. Reading, talking to people, and life experience all help it learn, think, and come to decisions. Lastly, its thoughts make their way to the subconscious mind. The mind that does things is called the subconscious, and it controls everything we do. It's where memory and instincts live, and it's also where a lot of power and knowledge are stored. It keeps the body's complex processes going, which is what makes life possible. Even the smartest and most educated people can't fully understand its amazing powers, but we know enough about how it works to be able to control it. And by managing it, we manage what we do. We can change our lives and beat what people call destiny by choosing what we do. Even though the subconscious mind is very smart and has amazing abilities, it only does what it is told to do, which means it blankly and completely follows the thoughts that are sent to it. Because of this, the behaviors we take rest on the thoughts we have. The subconscious mind will naturally do bad and harmful things if bad thoughts are sent there. It is inevitable that weak actions will be taken that will lead to loss if weak thoughts are present. If you have positive thoughts, on the other hand, you will act in a positive and helpful way. And if you have strong, success-filled thoughts, you will act in a way that will lead to success and victory. You can't think bad thoughts and do good things at the same time. Many have tried, said, "I will be outwardly respectable and blameless in life. Although I will secretly think this thought, I will embrace it in my breast because it is pleasant, but I will not let it go any further, because I know that evil deed leads to shipwreck and disaster. That is why I will deceive even my best friends. Outwardly, I will be all that I should be, but in my thoughts, I will be evil. Mine will be a double life. To outsiders, I will be one thing, and in my thought world, something different. Thus, I will be able to enjoy the evil in my thoughts and escape its sorrows." Such a person doesn't trust the strength of the subconscious mind. This huge patient is strongly influenced by every negative thought that is entertained and excited about. This goes on until he finally can't take it any longer and acts in a way that is exactly like the negative thoughts that he has been thinking. It makes sense that people who have always been good at what they do suddenly go badly and end up in ruin. They are just getting the harvest of their thoughts. This is true for most people who secretly think bad thoughts, but there are some who don't or can't act on those thoughts because they lack the guts or the chance. Because their thoughts are bad, they make. You feel feelings that you can't satisfy and have to hold back. Repression either causes a long-term illness that can't be cured by medicine or a biological illness that can't be cured by medicine. However, the reader shouldn't think that all people who suffer in this way have been thinking bad thoughts. This is just one way that some people can and do destroy themselves. This is just an example of what can happen when you think negatively, and most people have seen this happen with friends and family. There's no question that most of my readers will not think this way, but the law applies to all thoughts that reach the subconscious mind. Positive and negative are other names for the two types of thought, helpful and harmful. The things we do in life rely on the thoughts we keep having and send to our subconscious mind without stopping. If we let our minds focus on destructive, negative thoughts, which sadly happens a lot because it's easy to do, then we will automatically act in a destructive, negative way. If, on the other hand, we think positive or constructive thoughts, which takes work, just like climbing a hill, then we naturally act in a constructive way. So, a man who is angry and thinks about his problems will start to think about killing someone, and if he keeps thinking about killing people, he may try to kill someone. However, if the same man keeps his mind off his complaints and thinks of forgiveness, or even better, if he loves or holds in thoughts of goodwill toward the person who hurt him, his life will be happy, peaceful, and successful in the truest sense. Those who think weak and fearful thoughts, like worrying that their business will fail, their luck will run out, or that they won't be able to handle new competition, are more likely to fail because their actions will be weak and changeable, lacking the strength and determination they need to succeed. So, if he gets rid of all the negative, weak thoughts and thoughts of failing, and keeps his mind strong with positive statements of success or strong suggestions of success sent to his subconscious mind, then that man will succeed in life. Because what he does will be strong and clear. He will find that when he is going through tough times, his subconscious mind will give him a lot of energy, strength, courage, and drive. This happens because it has been taught by right thought to deal with those problems. When you feed your mind positive and powerful thoughts, it becomes a never-ending source of happiness. On the other hand, thoughts of fear, failure, weakness, difficulty, disease, decay, mortality, and death are all very harmful. They are bad for your health, your happiness, your situation, and all parts of your life. They hurt the nerve system, stop people from working, weaken their will, and make them make bad choices. It's clear that this is a very important issue, but neither kids nor adults are taught about it, because almost everyone doesn't know this. Most of us keep thinking negatively, which is very bad for us. Like, how many of us know that it's thinking that kills, not having enough food? Of course, most people who die of what they think is hunger have actually been fasting to get better from a physical illness. If they do it right, they can do it for 40 days or even longer. Besides not hurting anyone, it can be very helpful. In some cases, a forced fast of a few days can kill, but a volunteer fast of about 6 weeks is good. That's because the state of mind and the kind of thoughts that come with them are what kill, not having enough food. Once more, someone who hasn't eaten in a few days is generally very weak and on their knees. A person who goes on a deliberate fast, on the other hand, usually keeps working. It's only in the last few days that they work less than normal. A religious gentleman recently went on a 40 or 50-day fast, which was written down in our records. What's amazing is that he not only did his normal work during this time, but he also found the focus and mental energy to write a book about a difficult topic. This is very different from the state of a man who is hungry, who after just a few days falls apart and is exhausted and then dies quickly. This is a great example of how much mind and thought affect stamina and life. Our mental and emotional abilities have a lot of control over our lives and show that the right method can produce amazing results, even in the worst situations. The man who is hungry thinks he is going to die because he doesn't have any food, so he does. He dies very quickly. Because the man is fasting, he believes that it is good for his health, and it is. In the end, this led to the defeat of the fatal so-called biological disease. Recently, there have been a lot of stories in the news about famous people who have voluntarily fasted for long periods of time and then gotten better. I don't think this is new at all, though. Some people in certain groups knew about this way of healing at least 25 years ago, though the mental part of it didn't seem to be fully understood or valued. If a man who is starving starts out well-fed, he could live as long as a man who is fasting. He would if he could just control his thoughts and think like a helper thinks. But first, he would have to be persuaded that fasting is good for his health, which wouldn't be easy because prejudice and ignorance are hard to get rid of. Also, because people tend to worry about the future, he would probably be filled with worry because he would think he wouldn't be able to get food after his required fasting had reached the point where it was helpful. The thing that kills a hungry man is not having food, but his state of mind. It is his thoughts of fear that kill him, just as the thing that keeps a fasting man alive is his thoughts and hope of healing, which keeps him strong and able to work. There's no way to get the idea from these few words that I support casual fasting. For an unplanned fast can do a lot of harm. Fasting can be helpful in some situations, but it should only be done under the watch of someone who knows what they're doing. A lot of people also don't know about another thing, the ability to control thought. A London police officer can control and regulate traffic, but most people don't know that they can also control and regulate our thinking. When he raises his hand, the cars behind him stop right away, letting cars on a cross street go by. Being able to stop unwanted and harmful thoughts while encouraging positive and helpful ones is possible. You can't help having these thoughts is something that people say, right? They don't think about the fact that people can't control their thoughts. They don't know that you can change the subject of your thoughts on purpose, just like you can change the subject of a talk. We all change the subject of a chat if we don't like what's being talked about. But how many of us change the subject of our thoughts on purpose? It's almost as easy to do, though, if we just do it. People often think that something can't be done, when in reality they can change the subject of their thoughts, or even stop thinking altogether. Both of these are very high-level skills that can only be learned through practice and training. But if we are quietly determined, even the weakest of us can get them. We don't have to be smart, have special skills, or be out of the ordinary. In fact, our mental skills, willpower, and intellectual gifts may be far below normal. But if we are quietly persistent, We can learn to control our thoughts over time. And when we control our thoughts, we control ourselves. And when we control ourselves, we control life itself. We don't have to submit to its experiences, but we deal with them as best we can while keeping a calm and steady mind, a quiet faith, and an unwavering spirit. Chapter 3 is called Victims of Suggestion. In some way or another, we are all susceptible to advice. In order to take advantage of others, strong-minded and dishonest people purposefully affect others through advice. A lawyer in court tells a witness, "I suggest to you," and then makes a suggestion that could be false or unfair, but it could be so much that it makes the witness lose focus that his evidence is no longer useful. This is how a strong mind can control a weaker mind through advice and will. The hypnotist tells his victim that a piece of cold metal on his bare back is actually a red-hot iron, and the skin immediately burns and blisters, just like it would if the metal were really red-hot. Or he might tell his victim that a glass of kerosene is actually a glass of lemonade, and the person will drink it, enjoying it and thinking it is lemonade. The hypnotist does this and many other things to show how powerful suggestion is. In one of Dr. Scoutfield's books, maybe this one, there is a story about two famous doctors who, to show how powerful suggestion can be, drew a man into a restaurant and then told him he was very sick and should stay in bed. The man believed them because he knew how well known and respected they were as doctors. He then went home, went to bed, and died. It is reasonable and kind to think that none of the doctors thought the patient would get much worse after doing something that seems stupid and wrong. The newspaper tells us every day to take so-and-so's pills. It's possible to avoid the advice for years, but at some point we may either take the pills ourselves or tell someone else to do so. If you see a guy with watery eyes, coughing, and wearing a handkerchief, you may soon start to feel sick yourself if you are not in a good frame of mind. Suggestion comes to us through our eyes, ears, taste, smell, and touch, among other things. We are always vulnerable to it unless we learn to keep a positive attitude and use all of its forms to test ourselves. I have no choice but to talk about some other ways that suggestions affect and change us without us even realizing it. Advertising patent medicines in newspapers and magazines is the most effective and potent way to get people to do something. We've already talked about what happens when you see ads for the same brand of pills every day in your newspaper. But these old-fashioned ways of advertising drugs that aren't useful or healthy aren't nearly as effective or valuable today. Pictures of people coughing and hunched over in pain can only make people think they have those illnesses. Reading long ads in the newspapers at the time with the title, "What is this new disease coming on us?" as a child really affected me. I started to believe that I had the disease and was really sick from it. I was scared to the point where I probably would have gotten really sick quickly if I hadn't told my parents about my worries. I will never forget how they cheered when I told them what I did. It seemed like they would never stop laughing, but they laughed at my fears and have since kept a positive view toward or against ads for patent drugs. Many of my readers will have read the late Yaron Clarker's funny account of his experience with a medical work of symptoms. He said that after reading the book, he realized he had every disease in the world except maid's knee. It was written, no doubt, for laughs and fun, but there is a grain of truth in it that would put drug dealers out of business if everyone knew about it. There's also something called mass suggestion, which means that we all tend to think and feel the same way as most other people. To change the ideas and feelings of a crowd, all you have to do is be positive. It's hard to stay neutral when you're in a crowd. This is why normally smart people join the crowd when the country is happy. For the same reason, people who are calm and good in private may join in acts of violence and chaos when they are in a crowd. The energy of the crowd just grabs them and has such a strong effect on them that they get carried away. There is no doubt that some people are more open to suggestions than others. Some people are stiff and stoic, so suggestions don't seem to have much of an effect on them. On the other hand, some people are more open and tense. It's easy for these to be fooled by suggestions until they learn how to prove them. People like this may feel like they've had a bad time and that life is unfair for making them so sensitive, but they shouldn't feel bad about themselves. Instead, they should be grateful for all the good things in their lives. This is the type of person who can benefit most from suggestion when it is used in a scientific way. Finally, let's talk about temptation. We are all tempted in different ways. What really tempts one person might not tempt another person at all. Everyone is tempted in their own way. What is desire if not an idea? We don't need to talk about where or who suggests things. It's enough to know that we are influenced by them until we learn how to fight them. The idea of temptation is the most delicate one. It is so sneaky that it seems impossible to fight it in any way. The greatest book and teacher ever wrote, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation." To end this chapter, I'd like to say a few words about the teaching of those who say that almost everything is suggestion. Their theory says that all we have is awareness, and that everything in our lives is made up of suggestions, and so on. They say that accepting hints of poverty leads to poverty, accepting suggestions of sickness leads to sickness, accepting suggestions of problems leads to problems, and so on. As a way to fight these negative auto-suggestions, someone who is poor should say to themselves, while they sleep, positive auto-suggestions of wealth, success, and abundance. Some people call it the unconscious, but if the mind agrees with the idea, then there will be no more poverty. The person who is sick does the same thing, but this time he uses health advice instead. Both of them feel better. Most people reading this may think that all of this is nonsense if the subconscious or inner power mind only listens to what is told to it. Even though the author doesn't agree with this simplistic teaching, he thinks there is some truth to it. However, messing around with the subconscious mind in this way is not recommended. Many people today are suffering because they did foolish experiments without enough knowledge or experience. Chapter 4. How to get through it. Why is it so important to make life like clay in the potter's hands? Thinking right affects what we do and builds character. Having a strong mind is important for our health and the success of our whole life. It is important because we can resist dangerous suggestions if we think right. First, we need to understand that our thoughts determine what we do and how we act. The main reason for this is that our thoughts affect our lives. For example, if we can't get through the hard parts of life in thought, we won't be able to get through them in real life. This means that we must face our problems head-on and find a way to get through them through thought. Telling people not to think about their problems all the time and instead to focus on good things is kind of like telling them to get over their problems. It can, however, develop into a pattern of thought that is almost as harmful as thinking about problems all the time. People who say, "I have tried to think correctly, but it doesn't make a difference," are failing because they are applying what they think is good advice in a bad way, not because they are trying to think correctly, but because they are thinking in a wrong way. People like that say, "I refuse to think about my problems, so I never give myself bad thoughts about them." That's right, and that's the whole point. One runs away from life's problems instead of meeting them with courage and using their thought to solve them. When the mind thinks of a bad thought, like a bothersome task that needs to be done, a crisis that needs to be dealt with, or a problem that needs to be solved, it quickly moves on to a better thought. People who say, "I never think of my troubles," and avoid these kinds of bad thoughts will never be able to deal with real problems when they come up in their lives. In fact, their so-called right thinking keeps them from making decisions and dealing with their problems in a firm and sensible way. We must first get past our thoughts if we want to get past them in real life. There are two types of people in the world: those who beat life and those who give up on it. People who get through life's problems are those who do so with thought. People who don't think about their problems are those who are beat by them. Even if the latter haven't practiced avoiding unpleasant thoughts on purpose in a misguided attempt to follow a line of thought that they wrongly believe to be right, they are still passive because they don't think through the difficulty that must be thought through in real life. The power of thought to overcome is the key to success. If we keep getting through our thoughts, we build a strong mind. Life is a fight that you can't win without a strong mind. No problem can be solved by humans, and no problem can be solved by a strong mind. Without a doubt, if a person keeps their mind focused on a goal, they will not only reach that goal, but they can also do amazing things that no one would expect. When the mind comes across a tough thought, moves toward it, and then gives it the full force of its mind and will, it becomes strong and powerful. So, man moves through the problem as a whole and comes out on the other side victorious. This gives us an inner strength that builds over time and helps us get through hard times successfully when they happen. This is not the same as being worried about things. Stress is bad for you. When we worry about our problems, we not only make ourselves feel fear, which is one of the worst feelings, but we also make loops in our brains that our thoughts keep going around and around. The brain is built up in a way that makes worrying a habit. This means that as soon as we think of a problem that is about to happen, or something going wrong in our life or at work, or when we think that something has gone wrong, or when we fear that it might go wrong, the cells that are used for worry are activated. These cells are already full of nervous energy and ready to explode, and the thoughts keep going in the groove that has been set up for them, saying goodbye to peace of mind, sleep, and, over time, health. Some people worry a lot, which is something they got from their parents. One of these people is the author. Some people, on the other hand, never stress about anything. They would probably read a book if they were going to be put to death. "Please wait a minute or two until I finish this chapter," they would likely tell the executioner standing next to them. I had to tell a friend of mine that he was sick with a disease that would take away one of his senses. He was told, "You should try not to worry about it." He laughed quietly and carelessly, and then said, "I won't worry. Our family doesn't worry. We take things as they come and find that they aren't so bad after all. There are always ways to make things better." This shows how different people are in their personalities and how they act. But we think that the number of people who worry is much higher than the number of people who don't. We need to give fear its own part, because it's such an important topic. However, we should face our problems and unrealized fears with courage in thought and action. We should never run away from them, because I don't think there is anything worse and more harmful than that. People who keep avoiding their problems and refusing to face them are usually the ones who worry the most. Ignoring the problem with thought makes things worse, so there is really more to worry about. I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I have to stress this most important truth again. We have to fight the teaching in thought that tells us to forget our worries and think about nice things, or to imagine. It can be used in a good way, but most of the time it is used in a bad way. When used in a bad way, it weakens the will, takes away one's initiative, and takes away one's ability to choose and act. When the thought of a problem or trouble coming up on our minds, we shouldn't try to avoid it. Instead, we should face it with courage, reaffirming our ability to get through it and come out on top. If we respond to this thought with an encouragement of strength, success, and being able to conquer it, then when the hard time comes in real life, we will know we have the strength to get through it and come out on top. we'll have a strong mind and a surprising amount of power left over. This way of facing thoughts of failure, trouble, or fear changes the subconscious mind. When it is given clear instructions and knows what is expected of it, like a good worker, it doesn't let us down. These mantras can be different types, and they have to be different for each person who uses them. For one person, no affirmation that isn't based on the Bible and loyalty can help. For another, a religious affirmation wouldn't work, but a more psychological one might. Each person has to pick the form that looks best to them. If someone starts with a psychological type of reinforcement, they might change it to a religious or devotional type over time. The right form is the one that feels good to you at this very moment. Anyone with a religious mindset can confidently confront a thought of trouble, trial, or fear with the opposite thought or affirmation. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This means that they will get through this difficulty with the power of Christ, which they can use now and always. At the same time, you can picture yourself getting through your problem with a push from forces you can't see. Over time, you get into the mental habit of facing all of your problems and fears head-on instead of running away from them. By thought, one easily and regularly meets them with a sense of winning push. When someone does this, they become very strong, solid, determined, and good-natured. One type might not be able to use the faith form of encouragement, but they might be able to use something the same. Repetition of the words success, victory, and overcoming may help him deal with the thought of trouble or fear, but in a different way. At the same time, he may picture himself overcoming his problem or difficulty with the help of powers he doesn't understand, but that come from within him. Getting into this thought habit changes your life a lot, because character grows even when you don't know anything. The student does not let life's problems get the best of him. Instead, he finds ways to deal with them. He will find new fields to conquer and new, beautiful views to enjoy once he has won this battle. He learns that he has the power to change his character and, by extension, his life. Some people think with pictures in their minds. What their life is like and what their circumstances are like rely on what they see in their minds. So, if they are of problems, mistakes, etc., they should be turned around and put in the opposite direction. Some people naturally see bad things in their minds. When they think of the quarter, they picture not being able to pay the rent and the terrible things that would happen as a result, like being evicted, sold off, or forced to sell. In the case of landlords, when they think of business, they picture going bankrupt and being questioned by the receiver in court. If they are in the working classes, they imagine being out of work, poor, and one of the thousands of people looking for work, but not being able to find any. They imagine all the bad things and discomforts that come with being in this position. When they see a crash, they picture themselves as hurt people lying by the side of the road. When they see or read about a hospital, they imagine being a patient going through a feared surgery or saying goodbye to family members who are crying as they go to a better place. People who let these kinds of thoughts take over their minds can unfortunately experience the very things they are afraid of and imagine. Because of this, it is very important that all of these bad mental pictures have been turned into their positive counterparts. This way, not only do the bad effects of these pictures not happen, but the opposite states of mind are also possible. Imagery of failure, poverty, disaster, accident, illness and death can be changed into images of success, prosperity, health, safety, and a happy old age. Then, these desirable states tend to show up in life instead of the undesirable ones that might have happened otherwise. If, instead of picturing being kicked out or sold because you can't pay the rent, you keep picturing paying the rent and living in a nice, safe place without having to worry about anything, then this happy state of things is likely to come true a lot more often than it would otherwise. Remember that the mental picture is likely the strongest form of thought, so it's very important to train it properly. This kind of training leads to a happy state of mind, which is a very desired state. Additionally, it strengthens our character, making us strong where we were weak before and able to do many things we weren't able to do before. Chapter 5. The bad things we do to ourselves. Either we live in a universe that is bad and our fate is terrible and evil, or we live in a universe that is good and based on love. We can't help but think that most of us really believe the first statement to be true instead of the second. In our minds, we have these fears, which is why we are negative. Even though it might not look like it from the outside, this inner pessimism has terrible effects that are hard to measure. As I've said before, believing in bad things tends to make them happen. Believing in failures and diseases also tends to make them happen, and so on. Change of opinion is what is needed, and then a change of thought will happen on its own. We really do live in a well-organized world. In spite of the fact that we are not in tune with our real surroundings. The real world we live in is a perfect and well-organized reality. The secret rule of life is to love or work together. Reiner, a biologist, says that in nature, health and progress happen when this law of cooperation is followed by both plants and animals. On the other hand, disease and chaos happen when it is broken, which means when predatory or parasitic behaviors are followed instead of those of service and cooperation. Before we can believe in love, we have to believe that the world is ordered and that life is based on love. We must also believe and understand that the reason for our own bad things happening in our lives is us. Everything points to the fact that we are not living in harmony with life or following its basic rules. We can only have harmony, peace, real success, and a happy life if we are in tune with life and the organized universe we live in. We can only do these things if we follow the law of life and the universe, which is love or working together to help others. According to the prophet Isaiah, there will come a time when this rule will be strictly followed. The lion and the ox will eat the same food, and they will not hurt or destroy in all of my holy mountain, because the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord like the sea. We can work toward this ideal state, even though it seems far away. We know the truth. You can't help but feel a sense of unity and peace fill your life when you do this right now. We should thank God every day that the world is well laid out. Every day we can pray to stay in touch with Him. Its basic idea or rule is teamwork and useful service, which can guide how we think and act every day. At all times, our first thought will not be, "What can I get out of this?" but "How much can I help?" By the standards of this world, this is obviously stupid, but it is actually the smartest thing you can do to live a life of true unity, peace, and happiness. There was once a wise man who lived in a small town. Many people went to him for help and advice. Someone new to town asked the wise man, "What kind of people are these?" The wise man replied, "What kind of people were there in the city from which you come?" The newcomer replied, "Oh, they were miserable, unfriendly, mean, rude, and very difficult to deal with." "Well," the wise man replied, "here you will find them just the same." Another newcomer came up to the sage and asked the same thing. This time the old man replied, "What kind of people were those in the village where you came from?" The second newcomer replied, "They were wonderful, kind, friendly, and full of goodness. I was sorry to leave them behind." "Here you will find them just the same," the wise man replied. Because we all live in our own little worlds, our personal world shows what's going on in our minds. Our thoughts determine whether it is filled with hate and strife or love and peace. There is a lot of bad in our lives because we don't follow the holy plan, which is the only truth. Life is mostly good. even though it can be disappointing and hard at times. But many of the bad things that happen are our fault. As adults and old people, we don't have to pay for the mistakes and sins we made as kids. Life is good, but it makes you stronger. We can avoid many bad things and problems if we agree with it and happily follow its rules. That is, we need to stop making our own bad things. Chapter 6. The key to success and wealth is having the right thoughts and attitude. People who are successful have a certain kind of mind. They do have goals, a clear picture of what they want to achieve, the drive to do well, the ability to work hard, and a strong will. They work hard all the time and take advantage of every chance that comes their way. But the way they think is the main reason they are successful. They think about progress and success, as well as wealth and plenty. Over time, life begins to show the way of thinking that is usually thought of. If we think about success and wealth all the time, we will eventually experience some level of these things in our lives. In other words, we will achieve the highest level of success possible in our situation. Even though we can't all be at the top of the tree, each of us can climb to the best spot for our unique skills. We can all do a lot more than we thought was possible, except for those weirdos who think they can do everything but nothing right. We have incredible secret skills, and it seems that our skills get better as our tasks get bigger. In order to get through life, we have to do better, and sure enough, power and ability show up in ways that surprise us, and probably even our friends more. As a side note, I have talked to a lot of people who have failed. People who always fail, even though they work hard and want to get ahead, no matter how much help they get or how many great opportunities are there for them, are called failed. My mind has been stuck in the same way in all of them. They think in terms of suffering and failure, which is why all of their actions and choices, even ones they are not aware of, are geared toward making things worse. If two men have the same skills but different levels of success, one may seem very lucky and the other may seem very unlucky. But I am sure that the difference lies in their minds. One has a fixed idea of success and achievement that his thoughts, both conscious and unconscious, keep going around, while the other has a fixed idea or fear of failure that his thoughts keep going around. On is full of energy and driven to succeed, while the other is drained of energy by a secret thought or fear of failing and ruining everything. It's true that some people are born with a success mindset and others are born with a failure mindset, but that doesn't mean that the failure mindset person will always be a failure. His mindset can change. He doesn't need to pay a lot of money for a mental health professional to help him do this. He can do it himself by changing the way he thinks. By changing his thinking, he gradually changes his fixed idea of failure into one of success. His attitude changes, and his thoughts start to flow in a new direction. This changes the whole man, so that he rises like a cork in the water instead of sinking like a stone, reaches what to him is the top of his profession or vocation instead of gravitating to the bottom, and learns that there is plenty of room at the top. Since not many people use their minds in a good way, he becomes one of the chosen few because he does creative things with his mind instead of just doing everyday tasks. Don't forget that true success comes from helping others. The only way to be happy is to work together to make the world a better place, and that is true success in and of itself. Money and fame are useless if they don't bring happiness and satisfaction. Service and cooperative help bring the truest and most lasting success, and they make us indispensable in our particular branch or vocation. Eventually, quality of character tells its own story. Those who rise quickly by laughing at such things as service. The more useful we are, the more valuable we become, and so the prize is bigger. Putting all of this aside, the truth is that thinking about success and achievement while keeping an attitude of plenty and wealth tends to bring these things to us. Most people can't even imagine how creative the mind is, and the things we think about bring our thoughts to us, whether they are opportunities for success and more abundance, or failure and lack. The mind is where success starts, so instead of letting it wander aimlessly, we need to train it to think positively about achievement. While other people waste their free time doing stupid things, we need to keep an ideal in the mind around which thoughts will naturally and easily revolve. Such a positive thought forces us to work hard, while other people waste their time doing fun things. It's not hard, it's very enjoyable, and it gets us excited, which makes all tasks seem easier after a while. Eventually, just when we're ready, opportunity appears, as sure as the sun rising and setting. Before I end this chapter, I want to tell you that success can turn into our boss and us into its slave. Because of this, it is important that we choose the best kind of success. If we can, though, most of the time we don't have a choice because our desire is built into us. In our minds, there is the story of a poor boy from the country who went to elementary school and is now a priestly missionary. It looks like something that someone in his situation could never do. It's hard to say if he chose his calling or if it chose him. But no matter what, his life of work, sacrifice and service will make him the happiest, even if it means being tired, sick, poor, and laughed at by everyone else. He or she is most successful when they help other people and try to make the world a better place to live. Then it doesn't matter if his success makes him a master and him a slave. That kind of slavery is the happiest and most satisfying. That's the kind of prize that money can't buy, and those who try to get it by getting rich and famous always fail. Chapter 7 is called How Thoughts Affect Health. A lot more than most people think, our thoughts have an effect on our health. It's true that genetic diseases, weak food and bad habits play a big part, but I think that thought is the most important thing. I include emotions in the word thought because our thoughts make them happen. But you can train your thoughts to think in ways that are different from your basic urges or wants to avoid making your feelings happen. Usually this type of writing tells the reader to stop thinking about being sick, in pain, etc., and to think about being healthy, strong, whole, etc. As far as it goes, this is good advice, since thinking about being sick or hurt makes you feel bad, which makes you sick. Think of yourself as whole, healthy, and full of life, joy, and energy. This way of thinking can only help. So, a beginner can say, "I am in radiant health." Try to feel that way, and picture himself as the picture of perfect health and energy. This is the first step toward better health. Even though this method is good in some ways, it is not the best. As soon as possible, better methods should be used instead. But this isn't the only thing that's important. The reasons why people get sick go much deeper. It's too long for this short paper to go into detail about all the causes of diseases and disorders, but we can talk about 2 or 3 that are basic and very important. First, we need to understand that health is a state of normalcy, which means that being healthy is not bad, and being unhealthy is not normal. Sensuality, anger, and worry are the 3 emotions that are bad for our health. If you make it a habit to think of 3 things, purity, goodwill, which includes forgiveness and understanding the other person's point of view, and rest, you can get rid of bad ideas. In medical literature, most diseases are generally linked to syphilis and syphilitic diseases. However, we believe that one of the main reasons of sickness and even disease itself is having dirty thoughts and thinking sexual, kind thoughts and the like. Even though sensual behavior is bad in and of itself, we think that having sensual or romantic thinking is just as bad and has far-reaching effects. From a health point of view, these kinds of thoughts are bad because they make you want things, which makes you feel emotional energy that you have to hold back. This is likely the cause of many health problems. Now, trying to control all of our natural desires as something wrong and immoral is not the best way to solve the problem. The best way is to think above or beyond these things. We need to tell ourselves that there is nothing in sensuality that is the biggest lie, and that if this can't be our higher love, there are other things that are more important. The best thing for young men to do is to get up early and do something useful, like work or take a bath. This is much better than lying in bed thinking about sexual things. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better for an old maid to get up early and do something she enjoys, like gardening, than to lie in bed and think about a pure love that she can never have? The same is true for our thoughts. We need to expand our minds beyond what we can touch and feel, no matter how good those things may be in their purest form, and think about the bigger and more open things that are possible. It might be better to think about things that make you feel sexually aroused instead. Things like snow-capped mountains, acts of bravery, lives of self-sacrifice, the big universe, eternal truths, God's great plan for man, and our journey of discovery through time and space. Not just love or desperate desire, no, no, and no again. Not only is it wrong on a moral, intellectual, and spiritual level, but it's also bad for your health. We shouldn't push sexual thoughts away. Instead, we should think above and beyond them. This turns the vital forces into higher intellectual and spiritual powers. Instead of pushing the life force and our emotional nervous energy away or wasting it, we should use it for higher service. This makes us healthier and stronger, but also more noble and great in mind and character. It also gives us more endurance and the ability to reach much higher goals. Thoughts of forgiveness and goodwill can heal and keep you from getting sick. Feelings like anger, rage, vexation, hatred, racism, and thoughts of poison and payback are bad for your health. Instead, we can think thoughts of kindness, forgiveness, mercy, and not fighting back when someone hurts us. These all create healthy currents. They also help keep us healthy and away from disease because they connect us with the purpose of our lives. Without a doubt, most of us are long past the hate stage. Yes, we don't want to hurt or hate anyone, but we have let go of all our small grudges and grudges. We probably haven't forgotten about them, but they are still hidden deep in our minds, causing discord that shows up as illness or disorder in the outside world. Though many of life's problems are our own fault, it is not asserted that what we refer to as thought science or right thinking will help us solve all of them. In any case, we will still have to deal with the results of our past mistakes. However, it helps us deal with them in a way that keeps us from getting hurt by them, which is a big plus. Two people may go through the same amount and type of trouble. One person may handle it badly and become very sick, sad, angry, and irritable, while the other person handles it well and actually grows and improves. Our job's most important part is to teach people how to deal with life so that they can come out on top of everything they go through. Most doctors like this part of our job because they know that a patient will get better quickly if he or she calms down and keeps a positive mood during hard times. He will stay healthy. In this way, right thinking keeps us from getting sick in many ways and also heals us by calming and restoring our thoughts. Everything that is out of order comes from being separated from the holy order. We would not have to go through pain and problems if we could all become perfect and in tune with God. One of the reasons we suffer is that we are not in harmony with the perfect inner heavenly order. We punish ourselves, not God. When we do bad things, they hurt us. Since evil is its own judgment, being cut off from God's plan makes sense of everything. The wayward son wasn't punished by his father. He did it to himself by leaving his father's house and wandering around a faraway country. He was forgiven when he came back, and everything was happy and peaceful. To use current language, we need to join with the heart of all life, which is order and unity, instead of living a life where our thoughts, desires, feelings and affections are separate from each other. To begin with, this means we must have the will to do it. And secondly, that we must align all of our ideas with the closeness of God. It's clear that something like that couldn't happen if the person who wants it didn't get help from heaven. All the dark forces rise up to try to stop it if they can. There was someone who walked this path before us and was tempted in the same way that we are. But that person won a great win. Not I, but Christ, St. Paul said. This is the key to controlling your thoughts. Chapter 8. How thoughts can make you want something. There are two old proverbs that everyone knows and often quotes, but maybe you don't fully understand their deep psychological meaning. One is, birds of a feather flock together, and the other is, you can tell a man's character by the company he keeps. This pull comes from the way a man thinks. When we have certain kinds of thoughts, we draw other people who think the same way. The unseen forces of attraction pull us together. As time goes on, our thoughts do become like a mask that shows everyone what kind of person we are. Clean or dirty, strong or weak, loving or mean, noble or vile. But the main thing that draws people to us is the power of thought. Your thoughts bring you not only like-minded people, but also more thoughts that are like yours, as well as chances and events. Even though the mind is creative in some ways, it receives thoughts more than it creates them. There are, in a way, two doors in our minds. One leads to a stream of holy, good, beautiful, ennobling, clean and healthy thoughts, and the other leads to a stream of unwanted, harmful and damaging ideas. You can't have both doors open at the same time. When we think thoughts of goodness, honesty, compassion, etc., that are holy, the door to heaven and all that is beautiful opens, letting a flood of similar thoughts come in. That's the reason why prayer is so important. When you pray, you direct your thoughts and attention to heaven. You also direct your heart and emotions there. The flow of divine life, thought, and ideas then goes back the other way. Over time, someone who keeps doing this exercise is changed by this divine flow so much that they develop a heavenly mindset. Then, the other door that leads to all the bad things will always be shut. Bad thoughts can come in through that door during the changeover stage. This can cause what we call pitfalls. When we try to fight the forces, thoughts, or ideas of evil and close the door, it opens wider. Going up in our thoughts, attention, mind and heart to the good and spiritual truth is the only way to deal with things well. This means that the other door closes again when our mind is on earth or heaven, God or Christ. It will only burst open because we are less focused on what is good and pure. There are times, though, when the divine keeps coming in and changing and strengthening us. This makes it easier to keep our thinking on a higher level, which in turn keeps the other door more securely shut. What's bad about this is that the door of divine good closes when we let the door of weak or evil thought open. It doesn't matter how much heaven wants to help us if we let less important things take up our time and thoughts. This is how we see the worth of hope. If we put our worries aside and think about other things, we open the door to heaven and get new life, power, and good things that help us get through. When we look down and think about our worries, though, the door to heaven shuts and the other door opens, letting a flood of negative thoughts in to make us weak. When we refuse to think about our problems and difficulties and instead look to heaven and think of divine perfection or reality, we are freed in two ways. First, the spiritual source of our problems is closed, and second, we become open to a steady flow of heavenly influences. We not only draw one of the two streams of thought and impact we just talked about to ourselves, but we also make a setting for ourselves that is either attractive or repulsive. This vibe, aura, or personal energy either pulls people and chances to you, or pushes them away. If two men, one with an attractive personality and one with an unpleasant personality, were put in the same small business and given the same chances, the attractive personality would do a lot more business than the unpleasant personality, because it would bring in people, make them happy, get them to recommend it to others, and keep them coming back. He would make a living while the man who lived in an unpleasant place would go hungry. The same would be true for any job. A doctor, lawyer, or priest would have a lot of followers if they had an appealing personality, but only a few followers if they had an unpleasant personality. We need to feel good about the people we meet in order to build or grow an attractive atmosphere. We need to want to serve and help, and our ideas need to be right. You don't have to flatter someone, and you should never do it. Remember that no matter what we do for a living or what our role is, we are like a magnet that draws people to us out of kindness and goodwill, not because we have to or because they want to. Keep in mind that we don't attract people to ourselves. We do it to bless, help, and make them happy. There was once an undertaker who was so friendly that he did more deaths than anyone else in his business. Because it was real, his concern drew people in. If it had been fake, it would not have sounded real, and he would have been rejected as a liar and phony. He didn't want to do business with his pity. The thought would have made him sick. But he couldn't help but feel sorry for them, because he had a big heart that was open to anyone who was hurt. So, we need to find people who are just willing to help. We can't say no to something that makes us rich. Our goal should be to help and bless others. Some readers will say that what this chapter teaches is basically impossible, and they will be right. They will say that just as soon as a person starts to think rightly and want better things, all the powers of evil seem to come at him like the floodgates of hell opened and stop him from making any more progress. This is true, but there's more to the story. The person who strives for greatness gets help from above. There is life, health, power, and blessing for us whenever we lift our thoughts to a higher level and look up. Our older brother makes us stronger, no matter how much we want to give in. He who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. Chapter 9. Spiritual Getting High and Controlling Your Thoughts. Might have talked too much about material things in this short book, but the main reason was that it is our job to serve our time and our age, and to do the best job of service possible. I'm not for selfish success. Our goal shouldn't be how much can I get, but how much can I give in service and doing good things for other people. So, the kind of success and achievement I'm talking about doesn't have to mean getting a job or making a lot of money. It could mean giving your life for others in foreign work or other acts of selflessness and dedication. But power and being able to direct our thoughts are very important no matter what we do for a living. Young men can become missionaries even when others try to stop them if they keep their mind calm and their thoughts on the goal they want to reach. A person can get through problems that seem impossible to solve just by focusing their thoughts on a specific item. A man could never reach his goal if he let his mind roam and his thoughts follow them. It's important to remember that if we work hard at success, it will finally control us. At first, we think that success is a very shy and hard-to-catch bird. It keeps pushing us, demanding that we constantly deny ourselves and make sacrifices until we are finally tied to a life full of duties and expectations that we can't run away from or give up on without losing our honor. There, we learn that success is no longer our helper, but our boss, and we are its slave. So, it's important to set limits on our material goals. But there's no reason to set limits on our spiritual goals. The only thing that will make us happy is realizing that our search for God has turned into a slave and us into its boss. Not many people know this, but you can't reach a high level of spirituality without controlling your thoughts. Brother Lawrence, the outcome of thought training is a great example of this. Practicing being in the presence of God is what he does best. This humble servant of God worked every day with pots and pans in a convent kitchen and sink. He learned that by teaching his thoughts to always go to his Lord, he could feel his presence everywhere. Brother Lawrence said something very interesting. He felt closer to God when he was cleaning dirty pots and pans than when he was doing spiritual activities in his cell. For him, it became clear at that moment. This humble and naive brother became a saint, even though no one called him that, and a guide to many by focusing his thoughts on God and not giving up, even though his mind often wandered. We can really pray if we can keep our thoughts in check. Putting our attention on God makes a ladder for our ideas and feelings to reach God. Focusing our thoughts on one thing and staying there is what thought management means. As long as we keep our eyes on God, our minds will move up the ladder that was built. People whose attention and thought control are so weak that they are almost non-existent should say the prayers again. Self-prayer is still the best thing to do, but this is a good start and a step in the right way. People who say or repeat their prayers every night and every morning have a link to heaven that people who never tried to connect with God do not have. Giving your mind and thoughts to God, on the other hand, is a very different thing. It's something much bigger. It's the top level of spiritual practice. It's not easy, though, because our thoughts tend to wander to material things instead of spiritual things until we train them to stay on track. This happens because life's worries or goals catch our attention. Needless to say, we have to keep bringing our thoughts back until it becomes a habit. Only then can we really pray. Being a true prayer comes in many forms. While praying, you can ask for help, praise and thank God, meditate, or just think about what you're praying about. Finally, the last two are very difficult. You can only do them if you have almost perfect control over your thoughts. But controlling our thoughts isn't just important during prayer times if we want to develop our spiritual abilities and skills. We also need it during the day when we have to deal with the muck and scum of life. In the same way that Brother Lawrence found that the Holy Presence made his work more enjoyable, we can all say the same thing. Once he learned to let the Lord help him by being with him, he was able to do things that he had thought were too hard for him before. By regularly directing our thoughts and prayers to the closest heavenly being, we receive a lot of help and strength. Over time, our work, which we may not enjoy at first, becomes more enjoyable when we realize it is a job of love. We become aware of a new kind of friendship with other guys. We're not alone because someone is with us and helps us live a better life, work harder, and serve others with more loyalty. They push us to do things with a higher purpose. Because of all of this, a new, better character can be seen. This will always be true because character doesn't die, and we also change into completely different people. People might think we are religious or morally superior, but we might not be. But we might become better, more honorable men and women, and the world will be thankful for that. This thing called spiritual life is real. It's possible for two people to become emotionally awake and want to live a better, more noble life. One might be successful, while the other might give up after a tough fight and go back to his old life. The difference is that the first one keeps the fire in his heart alive, while the second one lets it die. The first person keeps praying and sending his thoughts to God, always thinking about better and greater things. The second person, on the other hand, stops praying and doesn't keep controlling his thoughts, so his spiritual life withers and dies for lack of food. Then temptation comes like a flood, and the fight is too hard for someone who hasn't prayed to prepare for it. They give up and go back to their useless life, because it doesn't look like there's any other way to do it. This isn't because the desire is too strong. It's because people cut themselves off from the one source of all power by not praying and not keeping their thoughts in check. It is very important to train your thoughts to move away from things that aren't worth it and toward things that are good, true, beautiful, and really worth it. That's why he writes books and puts out a magazine about it. Chapter 10. Getting over your fear. Fear probably leads to more bad things happening in life than we think. People who have no fear at all seem to be safe in a special way. Everyone knows that a dog won't bite someone who doesn't fear it. It also doesn't make sense to me that if you have no fear, the more careless you are, the more likely you are to get away with something. I think the lions in the den where Daniel was thrown could not hurt him because he was not scared of them. What the Lord had to do to make Daniel totally safe was take away all of his fear. This has been shown by the fact that preachers have met groups of armed cannibals who were hungry for their blood. There is no longer any fear in them at all. Going forward without a weapon into what looked like certain death was as easy as running into a group of lambs or going to a prayer meeting. The preachers were not hurt in either situation. But not being afraid of anything protects against more than just accidents in dangerous sports, dangerous animals, and violent people. It also protects against getting sick or spreading disease. Napoleon went to see people who had the plague to show others that people who did not have it could not get it. A man I knew would often go to smallpox and plague hospitals, but never got either disease. This was true even though he would kneel and pray next to sick patients, breathing in millions of germs. His only defense was his ability to think. He wouldn't believe that germs could hurt him. That is, he believed in God and had no fear because of it. He showed that Psalm 91 is absolutely true. To sum up, we can say that in a way, it's not germs that make us vulnerable to outbreak diseases, but the thought of being sick. When two people are introduced to the same illness, one gets sick and the other doesn't. The person who doesn't get sick is said to be stronger and more immune. This doesn't always happen, though. The strong are often caught while the weak are left alone. A second way to say this is that the person who runs has more endurance. Yes, it is, but isn't this mostly because of the mind? A person is more resilient if they keep an upbeat frame of mind. So, if we agree that being brave is necessary and desirable, how can we fix our genetic flaw? The truth is that most of us are afraid of something. Even if we're not afraid of anything, we may still be afraid of other things in our minds. Even if we are brave in other ways, we may be afraid for our business, our career, or our job. We might be scared of the dark shadow of unemployment, debt, and failure all night and all day. But while we might not be afraid of these things, we are afraid of disease, infection, contagion, drafts, and other things like that. Each new epidemic makes us nervous and scared. How can you get over these fears? The same way you calm a child down who wakes up at night scared of the dark. After telling him there is nothing to be afraid of, you could talk to him and show him that the room is the same in the dark as it is in the light, and that the things he is afraid of are only in his mind. If that doesn't help, tell him, "I will stay with you and hold your hand so that you will know that everything is okay." He will soon fall asleep because he knows you are strong and willing to protect him. We need to be kind to ourselves now. We are very complicated beings, and we can talk, think, and reason with ourselves. We do everything the same way we do with our kid. The first thing we tell ourselves is, "There is nothing in the world that can scare me." This is not mere empty bragging, it is a statement of truth. What we mean by this is not that we are so powerful that we can beat all the forces of evil. What it means is that the angels have sided with us because we sided with them. As it were, it means that we have linked ourselves with the inner balance of the world, the heavenly order which nothing can break, and over which the forces of disorder have no power whatsoever. It means that behind us is the full power of the secret divine forces, which are moving us toward the beautiful end created and planned for us in the depths of the divine mind and heart of infinite love. Therefore, we can use the words of Psalm 91, "To no plague shall thy dwelling place draw nigh." By doing this, we can feel and realize that it is just as we affirm, that there are indeed divine forces behind us, pushing us toward a fuller and richer life, and lifting us up to higher and better things. If you find these statements or invocations too advanced, high or wonderful for you, you can easily choose words of your own that are effective in your case, but the same process must be followed. It is better to use the negative first and then the positive. But like our imagined little kid who was afraid of the dark, we may feel the need for something else. He wanted us to stay with him and hold his hand so he could feel and understand that we were with him to protect and guard him. In the same way, we can summon and recognize the presence of the powerful and endless one. There is one who has beaten the world and defeated all the forces of evil, who has honored his humanity and opened the way for us by his own self-sacrifice. This one told us, "I will not leave you," just as he said, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the end." Chapter 11. Not demand, but submission. The beginner might think, quite naturally, that having found the great power of thought, all he has to do is to make use of it according to his sweet will. But there is probably no bigger mistake than this. It is because thought is so strong and its effects so far-reaching that it is important that we train our ideas to align to the inner rules of the world. Each of us is part of a full whole. God is our Father, or heart, and every man our brother. We are each other's servants. Until we understand this, we will not be in balance with life and the world, not only in our deeds, but also in our thoughts. For if we have a wrong idea of life, then all our thoughts will naturally be wrong also. It has been said that we can only master nature by following its rules. It is equally true that we can master life only by obeying the rules of life. If our thoughts are not in line with the goal of life, we become black spots on the heavenly body. Only when we become brothers of humanity, living in tune with the rules of life and the grand plan of the world, can we feel peace in ourselves. Only then can our life achieve real and true satisfaction in the greatest sense of the word. It is possible to demand from life and get what one wants. This leads to success, gain it of course at the cost of much work and effort. We all have to pay for our success. Those who are not ready to pay cannot achieve anything. It is precisely because success requires so much of us, in terms of character, patience, perseverance, loyalty, sacrifice, which makes them useful as character teachers. Keeping success and staying unmoved by it requires greater qualities of character than its achievement. Still, none of these things can bring happiness or peace if they are forced upon us without any thought for others or for God. If you want happiness, peace, and unity for your own reasons, they will not come to you. Sometimes it does feel like we're in charge of our whole lives, and that we are the masters of our fate and the leaders of our soul. This can motivate us to reach our goals and go through events that help us get ready for bigger things. Everything is fine as long as it's fine, and it may be a very necessary part of our lives at some point. But eventually, we realize that even though we are in charge of our own lives and can choose between good and evil, there is always a higher power shaping our end, no matter how bad it is. There is a balance inside that we need to return. No matter what, we are a part of a whole that includes everything else. To fit in with the whole's unity, we need to stop being so selfish and start caring about everyone. That is, we should love God and love our friend, instead of forcing our will on others, instead of becoming the center of everything else, and instead of forcing and demanding. If we want to be truly happy and content, we need to love and serve God, people, life, and the world. This way, we can join the whole into balance. The most important thing in life is love, but it's better to think of it as working together. When we think, act, and feel in line with this law, we find real happiness, peace, joy, and things that are more valuable than anything money can buy. We can then understand why we need to train our minds to think of kindness and compassion rather than anger and hate, why we should work together rather than compete for our own benefit, and why we should serve others rather than ourselves. This is the only way for us to become brothers of all people. We can only connect with the holy inner unity if we become brothers of all people. Behind the chaos of everyday life, there is a spiritual order that keeps everything in the universe in order. If every person was in line with this cosmic plan, it would show in the world. But I get in the way. Love, unity, and kindness are the keys that each person can use to get to that inner order and balance. Because we've found our way into this unity, it's easy for our brothers to do the same. These days, psychology is taught, mainly in American books, which is harmful and evil. It teaches through suggestion how to abuse the power of the mind. To force others to do what the programmer wants, the mind and will are used. One example is a seller who wants to get an order from someone who wants to buy a house. The seller makes the buyer strongly want to sign the order while the buyer is still thinking about it. If the buyer doesn't know much about this, he might be forced to do something he doesn't want to. It is illegal to use mental pressure in this way. It is done in many different ways, even though it is not officially illegal. But the person who uses the way is the one who suffers the most, not the people who are hurt by it. People who abuse their minds in this way will meet nemesis. When we break the rules of life, we have to deal with very bad consequences. The mental wrongdoing I've talked about goes against the internal rule of unity I already talked about, so it causes chaos and pain. Steps 1 through 12. Zechariah 4:10 says, "Who look down on the day of small things." We can't learn how to think right and control our thoughts at the same time. We all have to start out small and slowly get stronger and more important. That is, we all have to begin in a way that seems small and humble. I mean to use seemingly when I say it. It may not seem important to consciously think thoughts that are different from what our feelings and lower nature make us think, but it is a very important thing to do, and if we win, it will be a huge accomplishment. Freely thinking good thoughts about someone who has hurt us may not seem like a big deal, but it is a huge deal that will last forever. Giving in to the urges of our physical nature puts us on the same level as the animals, making us friends with death, decay, and mortality. But if we choose to think good ideas, we enter a road of freedom and liberty that goes on forever and up to the stars. It might not seem like much to choose to think of good and clean things instead of sexual ones, but it is actually a huge accomplishment, since sensual thoughts are the source of all misery. Man's weakness and sadness may seem trivial, but it's not so silly after all, because it has a big impact on how well our lives go. It might not seem important to think about God and eternal things instead of dying and short-lived things, but it is important to do so because this is the only way to enter eternal life, by joining with something that doesn't die. It might not seem important to choose to think of yourself as one with the source of all life and light instead of different and alone. But this is also important because it's when we realize the truth. Thinking about health, balance, and the joy of life instead of sickness, disease, and death may seem like a small thing, but it has big effects because it greatly affects our health, and we can't do much without health. Even though we are embarking on a big adventure, we need to start small and be happy with small successes, or satisfied in one way but not in another. In the beginning, we have to be happy with what seems like small successes, because bigger victories are impossible. We want bigger things though, and plan to get them when we're strong enough. There is a weak baby inside all of us at first. This baby is timeless and heavenly, and it is fed by right thought that is in line with the laws and rules of heaven. In a way, the natural or lower part of us that is the opposite of heavenly is strong and well grown. So how can the weak baby of goodness and the heavenly nature beat the strong ruler of the lower? If we lift our thoughts above the things of time and sense into the timeless realms of the good, the beautiful, and the true, we can draw on sources of life and strength that will never run out. Think thoughts that are holy and strong instead of thoughts that are bad or weak, and you open yourself up to receiving a flood of divine life and power. All the forces of heaven rush in to help and feed us when we make a deal with them. The old nature is strong, but the new and holy nature is weak. The former will win in the end if we keep our minds on higher and better things. Even though it goes against the way we've always thought, we need to think the best things we can. In a way, the new nature eventually eats up the old nature, but it takes a very long time. It's not enough to just think good thoughts instead of bad ones. Right thinking is a lot more than that. For each person, right thinking means something different. People who are just starting out should think good thoughts instead of bad ones and ask heaven for help. The negative and positive sides of the same thing are negative and positive thinking, respectively. Depending on our thoughts, we can live at either an extreme. In the next column, I'll list a negative train of thought and its positive reverse. I hope this helps you think more clearly and overcome problems in the future. Life is cruel and evil, according to a negative thought. What awful thing or bad thing can happen to me at any time? Fail, go bankrupt, lose your job, get sick, or have an accident. Life is good and always tries to bring me the most good, is a positive thought or statement. Nothing bad can get close to me, and nothing can hurt or kill me. All of my life is blessed by God in a way that makes it better and doesn't make it worse. God's life makes me healthy, strong, and happy. If you meditated on a negative thought, especially if you were already feeling very worried, your worries would get worse, and, at worst, you would feel sad. If you think about and say the words in the right column, on the other hand, you will feel stronger and ready to face the battles of life again. Not only that, but if you let the negative chain of thought grab your attention and stay there, you'll be more likely to accept the negative advice, which can then make the things you fear come true. What if you connect with and support the good thoughts in the second column? Then the negative thought will go away, and the good, life-giving truth will take its place. If someone can do this, they become strong and sure, and the things they support start to show up in their life. Every day, you should set aside time to meditate in silence. It should be done in the evening or, if not, early in the morning, with good thoughts like the ones above. But it's just as important to get rid of bad ideas during the day. What needs to be done should be done quickly. Meditation would take too long to use in the middle of everyday life. What is needed is a short declaration that hits the negative thought right on the head and replaces it with a positive statement of the truth. So, the following is how we can deal with the different bad suggestions. Evil thoughts include sickness, disease, pain, poverty, difficulty, failure, anger, hate, and bitterness. Affirmations that are true. God keeps me healthy. God is my endless source of support. God is my success, or God is in me as my strength to do what I want to do. God is love, and He changes me and finds a way to voice Himself through me. I'm not exaggerating when I say that whoever follows these lessons will change his life and himself for the better. If our surroundings is sad or bad, and our life is hard, this is not what needs to be changed. Prayers for a better and easier life are the worst thing a man can do. If only my circumstances were different, I could get ahead, keeps someone in misery and makes their bands of slavery tighter around them. We should never ask for projects that are the same level as our strengths, but rather skills that are the same level as our tasks. We have to change, not the things that happen to us. We have to get past our problems and limits by going beyond them. Things around us and the situations we live in change when we do. As a result, we can only improve our character if we can get past our thoughts.